stars be with you.
Hi friends, welcome to this broadcast on the total lunar eclipse in Pisces that we are having this weekend on September 7th. My name is Melissa LaFera. I'm an astrologer, a tarot consultant, and all-around creative from sunny San Diego, California. And today we are going to be talking about this eclipse and what it may have in store for us on a general collective theme, and also for each of the 12 signs. So just as a gentle reminder here, take what resonates, leave the rest, because only you know you best. So if it sits, take it in, and if it doesn't, wash it away with the Pisces lunar eclipse. So before we get started here, since it's moon time in the skies, I wanted to share that I am doing a pilot research program on Lunar Voices, where I'm collecting information of all 12 moon signs around some of the characteristics of what the moon may mean in the chart, like what makes us comfortable, of what health issues we may have, what level of fear resides within us, what tastes you like, etc. So if you are interested in helping me with that data, come on over to my Google form. You can click the link below and it'll take it there. It'll be about 5 minutes to fill it out. And I hope to share all this information here later because, you know, what's the best way to learn about astrology is through the horse's mouth. Let's see what the experiential experience is like by collecting the data. So please come on over and fill out my Lunar Voices form. All right, so the Pisces lunar eclipse is going to happen on September 7th, which will be a Sunday here, 2025, at 11:08 a.m. Pacific time. And this is these sets of eclipses are unique in the sense that this is going to be our only set of eclipses that happens in Pisces and Virgo. Earlier this year we had Aries, we had an Aries Virgo mix, and then in next spring we're going to have an Aquarius solar eclipse, and then a Virgo lunar eclipse. So this is purely concentrated around the mutable parts of our charts, and that in really the axis of Pisces and Virgo. And so this is a mutable water and really a mutable earth, changing of stories, because that's what eclipses are. These are times where the chapters of our lives turn. One will close, one will start to open, and we'll see that on the collective sphere as well. And really the ancients considered the eclipses to be rather malefic in a sense, because, I mean, let's face it, humans don't necessarily like change. Not all of them, some do, some don't. But it really is a part of a point in time where there are greater cosmic forces at play that are not necessarily always in our own agency. So given that, especially with the Pisces theme that we're going to be talking about today, if we think about mutable water and Pisces being a very spiritual sign, and the let it go, let it flow, you know, surrender to something higher, the let go and let God or spirit or whatever you might call a higher power, Pisces is really tapping into that, because this is a sign that is ruled by Jupiter, which does have to do with, you know, the higher powers that be, and also morals and ethics. But, you know, you think about Jupiter as the great god of Zeus, and he was the king of the gods. He was the utmost of the gods. And so this Pisces eclipse is under the reign of Jupiter, which is the god of all gods, right? And it's trining Jupiter in Cancer, which Jupiter in Cancer is exalted. We're dealing with another water sign. We have cardinal water mixing with mutable water. And water, if you think about it, water is a connective factor. You know, water can be a little squirrely. It needs a container to be in. Otherwise, it just floats and it can be absorbed elsewhere or disperse in some way. And really, so we're talking about these cold and moist energies. So it's a slowing down. There's a connective quality that's at play. And there's also a much needed receptiveness, because when you think about water and earth both, because water is cold and moist, earth is cold and dry, there's a lot of cold, which if you think about cold, it's hot ramps everything up, right? Cold cools it down. It makes it more receptive. Earth and water signs turn inwards. And this is something that may be desperately needed, especially at a time when everything has been go, 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 and there's changes, and we've had all this air and fire just blustering through. I got to choke about it. Just think about it, thinking about it. And so there's something about this lunar eclipse that really asks us to slow down. Sometimes that can put, Jupiter is known as a planet that is about growth or progress or opening new doors to things. But especially since Saturn has just moved back into Pisces on September 1st, and we have a Saturnian story that still needs to be wrapped up in the Pisces areas of our chart, there may be a walling off, there may be a blockage or an obstacle to contend with in order for growth to happen. And maybe that's where we're reflecting right now. We're reflecting on paths that close, or things that might not feel right, or how sometimes if you're a very intuitive person, there might just be this sense of like, no, like, and you might not even know why, especially if you've been doing it for a while. But now is the time to really tap into that sense of what feels right. And if something doesn't feel right, then reflect on that, because this really is an eclipse about letting go and surrendering and letting go for something better. That's essentially what I'm titling this eclipse, is letting go for something better. Because when we let go for something better, we actually free up the energy. And like I said before, this is a very spiritually oriented eclipse. So we want to be aligned with what our greater spiritual purpose is. And sometimes we have to slow down and also accept that. This can be an eclipse that taps into forgiveness on some level, acceptance, grief-oriented energies that can be transmuted in a way, or washed, or so that rejuvenatory healing balm. And it's not a new thing, right? Because we've had Saturn in Pisces, we've had Neptune in Pisces, we had Jupiter here, I think back in 2022. And so there's been a lot of, in the North Node, because this is a North Node eclipse, right? So there is something to be said about all the work that we've done in this Pisces area of our chart. So you want to look at the house, and we'll talk about this in the individual signs here in a second. But you might want to look at that area and really think about how much, or maybe feel into how much work has been done there, and what still needs to be nourished or surrendered to, or created, right? Water is very creative as well. Especially when we think about the form energies of water coming together with earth, because Virgo, it's Virgo season, right? We have Mercury in Virgo, we have, and then the South Node in Virgo. So it's interesting to think about, this is a North Node eclipse, but there are South Node energies at play, because, the sun is sitting there. So maybe there's a part of the ego identity, or certain ambitions, or the I ams of sorts. Or I have a friend who recently performed an ego death, which I thought was very intriguing, especially with the sun moving to the South Node right now. And so where may that come in play in order for the nourishment qualities of the moon and the lunar self, and the more the ebb and flow and the soul to come forward? At this time, because Virgo can be very grasping. It's like all about the details and order and perfection, and things have to go exactly like this, and this is the plan. Why isn't the plan working? And Pisces is like, hey man, go with the flow. So there is this element of like, how well can you go with the flow right now? Because Saturn's going to be in this area until February 13th of next year. So there is a lot of Pisces work to be done. And this lunar eclipse may bring that up, may bring that to the forefront. It also makes me think of like this lessening of toil, or letting go of perfection or habits or ways of being that have been working for a long time, right? Does it feel good? Does it feel aligned with what your spiritual self wants to put energy towards? There's this winding down of fluctuation or having to move resources or juggle life. Like if you feel like you're just the question of why may come up. Do I care about these things? Does this really matter to me? And if not, how do I let that go and then leave space to recalibrate for what will fill in, for what the container will look like? Because there is something to be said about the Pisces energy. Right now, if you think about water, it's going to disperse everywhere. But the solar eclipse in Virgo that's coming in 2 weeks' time on the 21st is going to oppose Saturn, which can be a difficult configuration, 100%. But it also makes me think of form in some way. So what can we disperse and release now that maybe we can start a new form or to reinvent the form once that comes around? So, all right, well, let's get into our signs here and see what's in store for the individual signs. Okay, for the Aries and Aries rising, we have the lunar eclipse in the 12th house, the sun in the 6th house with the south node, and Jupiter over there in the 4th. So this is a very personalized internal eclipse. A lot is happening underneath the scenes or beneath the scenes, so to speak, in more of the spiritual realm, the emotional realm, but also with the work and the day-to-day living, right? And so I find it interesting that our cards here, and I will say the cards are the Tarot of Her, which I co-created with my good friend Sarah Jane Lambert, and we are about to launch our 2nd edition here on Kickstarter shortly this fall, so stay tuned for that. And also the Poesis Oracle. So we have the 9 of Blooms here in first quarter, along with this Connect card. And to me, really any sort of full moon in your 12th house, not to mention an eclipse, there can be this overwhelming theme of having to really let go, take time for oneself, go into solitude, listen to more of like the spiritual underlying messages that are coming through, like a real slowing down, because the work area, health, just the overwhelming responsibilities of like keeping up with everything and why may start to wear on the person, right? And so that first quarter of the 9 of Blooms there and this level of endurance, there might be this question of like, why am I enduring this? What is it that I feel that I need to keep doing, even though it's like wearing me thin? I also think about this card as being a point of delegation, and especially seeing the connections here and connecting with others. Maybe there is a point of delegation. We think about the 6th house being a place of coworkers or employees. So is there possible help that can come in to relieve some of these burdens or taking on too much, so that you can hang back and have that downtime that is much needed? I also think about connecting the dots with with the sense of endurance and having to continually put effort into something, and especially if it's a long-term thing, because sometimes we have to sacrifice. We think about the 12th house being the sacrificial place, but sometimes we have to sacrifice in order to get the things that we want. Maybe we've been working for something for a very long time, and this could be a recalibration moment of how you can reach the end point. Maybe not with effort in this particular moment, but there might be a time out that's needed in order to push towards the next phase, and maybe connecting the dots around that with this break in the endurance or getting help in that area. So slow down, take a breather, relax in a bath, float in the ocean, give yourself time to catch up with yourself, because you probably need it. For the Taurus and Taurus risings, we have the lunar eclipse in the 11th house, the Sun, South Node, and Mercury in the 5th house, and then Jupiter over there in the 3rd house. And so I loved seeing the Three of Blooms in this waxing gibbous phase come up, along with the Heal card, because, you know, 11th house has a lot to do with our friendships, our place in society where we feel we belong among the masses, you know, what groups we're aligned with, but it also has a lot to do with what we hope and dream for in life. And we think about the future vision of where we want to go. What do we see from a higher vantage point that we might be even holding space for or waiting for? So the Three of Blooms in this waxing gibbous phase means that these hopes and these dreams are maybe filling your cup at this time, and there is sort of this wait and see dynamic of what you've already put out there, so that it can come back to you, and you can really see that progress that you're looking for. And maybe some of that progress might be connected with healing that needs to be done, because in order to move to bigger and better things, or to maybe even believe that, yes, this is possible for me, and really staying in that positive and ready to manifest sort of space, there might be a healing that needs to be done, or even healing around what progress looks like in your life. And especially when it's around what your heart really wants, maybe your creative faculties, maybe even love relationships with that 5th house energy. But it is more about this grander scheme of you know, healing, so that you can really make progress in life, and enjoy it, and start to reap the fruits of your ambitions. And so there might be just a lot of processing that's going on right now. So getting in, especially Jupiter in the 3rd, getting in that headspace of positive beliefs, you know, positive outlooks and outcomes can be very healing right now, and facilitate the process of bringing your ship in. All right, for Gemini and Gemini risings, this is a big one because it's in angular houses. So we're having this lunar eclipse in the 10th house, and the Sun and Mercury in the South Node are in the 4th house, and then Jupiter's over there in the 2nd. So whenever there is angularity, you know, when we talk about the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th house, these are big eclipses for these people, you know, especially the mutable signs right now. So if you are a mutable sign, know that this is a massive eclipse season for you, because things be changing. And things are changing around the 10th house of career, you know, ambition, your goals in life, and sense of authority or dealing with authority figures. Also with legacy, you know, what is the legacy that you want to leave? And what is necessary to tap into at the very bottom of your sense of self, and, you know, emotional foundation, in order for that to facilitate this blossoming out in the world. And there might be actual just changes in your, you know, your home right now, and where you live. You know, a job change can facilitate a home change in some way, or your home may be needed for work. But Jupiter over there in the 2nd, it bodes well for some sort of boost in finances, which is nice. Or maybe a lot of finances are going out right now, and there is this, I need to make changes and decisions so that I can get myself in a more secure financial place, which is possible with Jupiter hanging out in your 2nd house until, you know, summer of next year. So if it's looking a little meager right now, or there's concerns there, you know that there's going to be opportunities to expand that place, but maybe there's moves being made now in order for that to happen. And I like seeing the Sage of Stems here in the waxing gibbous, along with the Wound card, And wounds coming up, that's not always fun. Our ghosts from the past come up, or things that we've been dealing with our whole life, those chronic pains that seem to bother us or poison us in some way. I like seeing the Sage of Stems here because this is about being able to control emotions, not necessarily in a way that is going to be detrimental to oneself, or at least I hope not. But sometimes we need, in order to especially deal with our wounded parts, we'll need to have that mature emotional response, or be able to cultivate our feeling and our reactionary self, and also our relational self, to deal with what's before us in a mature and patient manner, one that does have foresight or vision to it. Also, I feel like this is a very intuitive card too. If you have certain intuitions or visions that you have around maybe your creative life, this is a place to give structure to that. But in order to give structure, there might have to be some of this wounding that needs to get through, so that you can really make that impact that you want to make in life, and make those decisions to move towards those goals, or that profession, or the job opportunities, or the meaningful work that you want to do. For the Cancer and Cancer risings, we have that lunar eclipse in the 9th house, along with Mercury, Sun, and South Node in the 3rd house, and then Jupiter over there in the 1st. So all the Cancer and Cancer risings are getting that Jupiter energy in the 1st house, which is nice because that's an angular place. As I talked about earlier, angularity brings things to the forefront and makes it very active. So what's interesting is there's the activity of growth here with Jupiter in the 1st house, but there is also this place of the eclipses highlighting the 9th and the 3rd, which is a cadent house, which sometimes there isn't as much movement here. It might be more in the head, or more there can be busy life things going on, but as far as like making solid concrete moves, it's more like the work is done in the mind and in the belief system. This 9th house eclipse is, we're pointing to the North Node, so we're growing new ways of looking at life, new world views, ones that are more spiritually aligned or compassionate or understanding in some way, versus maybe a really critical, thinking pattern, or focusing on what's wrong or trying to fix things, or that 3rd house Virgo can be very exacting, and I need to know all the specifics and give me the data. But the lunar eclipse is like, but just believe, just have faith, just look at the big picture, and grow through that as a person, with your sense of your own philosophy and path and journey that you're on in life right now. Because it's interesting to see the Warrior of Leaves here in the waxing gibbous phase, along with Guide. Well, Warrior of Leaves make me think of, rushing in and, having some sort of agenda, and this is on my mind, and we're going to do this. And it's got a really forceful energy to it, which sometimes can bring up conflict and fights and, things along those lines, especially if you're out to get what it is that you want to get, or do what it is that you want to do, or say what you want to say. But I also think there's like a tightening up of the mind here, because when the mind is clear and we have clarity in the sense of being certain about what we may want to do, or how we want to approach something, or what the best path forward is, or how to put our ideas into motion. I think that's a big part of it too, how to put ideas into motion. I feel like we're supported here with the Guide. And I say we because I'm a Cancer myself. But there is some guidance right now, because we're talking about the house of God. The 9th house is the house of God, and the 3rd house is the house of the goddess. So there is this sense of being pointed, particularly in a direction. And then how are you going to take your thoughts and your attitudes and your, that will, the forward momentum, and move towards where you're guided right now, because there is a big chance to make lots of growth for the Cancers right now. So you're going to want to take advantage of that. All right, for the Leo and Leo risings, we have that eclipse happening in the 8th house, and the Sun, South Node, and Mercury in the 2nd, and then Jupiter over there in the 12th. And you know, 8th house and 2nd house are money houses. So money may be a big thing right now for the Leo and Leo risings, especially if we think about the 8th house being a place of credit and debt, but also inheritances, loans. So there might be switches around, you know, getting money, sharing resources with other people. Whether there's being cut off from things like shared resources that then affect your money flow, or applying for more credit, or paying down credit. You know, there's lots of different ways to come at managing the resources right now. And you know, if we tap into the Pisces energy, there might just be this place of having to have faith that resources will come to you when things might look a little meager now, especially with Jupiter over there in the 12th. You know, there's a lot going on behind the scenes for your growth and your journey and your path right now. And so this is a very spiritual period of life that can be more internal. And you know, the 8th house brings up things also like our intimate relationships, being able to be intimate with other people, whether that's in a physical way or an emotional way, sharing what it is that we value and what has meaning to us. Maybe there are money issues that come up and you have to be able to be frank with someone else about it. Or there's changes that you want to have happen in your life that there needs to be a forthrightness about the details around that too. Or someone might bring changes upon you because the 8th house is a transitional place. This is the house of Hades. You know, we think about Plutonian energy and death and decay, which sometimes there could be literal deaths that happen, where there, you know, sometimes a loved one or a pet or just a way of life or a way of being, you know, that spiritual energy, something's dying to be reborn. So know that there is a cocoon phase going on here, this butterfly energy for the Leo and Leo risings. So seeing the 7 of blooms in the waxing crescent phase and expand. I'm loving this very Jupiterian card, right? This expansion. So there's 2 ways we can look at this, because the 7 of blooms has us defending our position in some way. You know, there's a defensive nature. Sometimes that's needed because we need to defend what it is that we are doing or want to do. And we do that in order for the expansion to happen. But also there can be a looking at how that defensiveness or, you know, staving things off, or like being that different, you know, sometimes the 7 of wands, or wands is here, but also blooms is, you know, just the outsider, like fending everybody off. And so there might be an exploration around that defense mechanism and how it serves expansion, because sometimes it can. Sometimes you got to be on defense to be able to make progress, especially if you're dealing with other people. But also there could be a block to expansion there. So maybe questioning what that defensiveness looks like and what the purpose of the defending is, and then how that facilitates expansion and change in life that you're looking to make. For the Virgo and Virgo risings, this is obviously a big month for you. Not only is it your birthday period, but having an eclipse. I mean, if you were born around September 7th, September 6th, September 8th, but especially September 7th, you know, you're having this eclipse on your birthday. So this will be a massive year for you, where a lot of changes are likely going to happen in your life. But once again, we have angular eclipses here, lighting up the 7th house for the eclipse. The Sun and the South Node and Mercury are there in the 1st house, and then Jupiter in the 11th. So there is this back and forth between, you know, you and me, relationships. There's a big focal point on relationships right now. and growing towards relationships, whether, sometimes that is like getting in a relationship, that's doing, having compassion and understanding to maintain relationships. Sometimes that's letting go and surrendering a relationship. It depends on what the relationship will look like. And of course, there's always a relationship to yourself. If you're not in a relationship, that might come up too. It's just a relational quality. And it's not just about our marriage partners or our significant others. This can be best friends. This can be business partners. This can be our enemies who we can't stand. And now we're like, you know what? I forgive you. Because there is this aspect of Virgo in the first house and the South Node there, that there might be a way of being right now that really is not helping your relationships and being able to relate. So this, the idea of like you point one finger, the rest are pointing back at you. There might be this time where it's more about internally, well, let me reflect on how I'm showing up to this situation, and does it serve my relationships? Does it serve my friendships and my connection with the group, and my greater goals and wishes in life, right? With Jupiter over there in the 11th. Because Jupiter wants to give you good things and good fortune, but there's this relational quality that needs to happen. And so look to where you might be tripping yourself up, especially with the Judgment card here in the disseminating phase. And then we see Love card. It's you put those two together, Judgment, Love, those don't really go. Right? So if there's this, in the very literal sense of judgments being made against other people or even yourself, there is this chance to let love shine through and be that healing balm that helps connection happen. Because the Judgment, there's this wake-up call energy, essentially. There's something has ripened to the point where it needs to change no matter what. And this can be around maybe your communities and how you're putting yourself out there in the world, since it's in the disseminating phase. Or this could be old wake-up calls in the sense where you're like, I've had this so many times and now the issue is coming back up. And so what are you going to do about it? So it's a ripe time to change. It's a perfect time to make that shift, to embrace a calling even, if you're called to do something, and then to do it with love, because love, as you say, is what makes the world go round. All right, for the Libra and Libra risings, we have the eclipse in the 6th house, and the sun over there in the 12th, and then Jupiter in the 10th. So it's interesting because Jupiter is pushing a lot of forward momentum around your goals and ambitions in life, your profession, your career world, stepping into authority or dealing with authority figures in some way, this sense of legacy, what am I doing with my life and how can I make progress in this, public facing sphere. But it has a lot to do right now with maybe day-to-day actions, and how your routines and your habits, whether they're work or health, or what responsibilities you take on, how are those serving these bigger goals? Because, we have to align our day-to-day movement to, serve the bigger picture. And so this might be a time where there is, to go straight to the cards, we see the 7 of Blooms energy in Waxing Crescent, and then the Simplify card. So once again, I believe it was the Leos, we have this defending position, having to be on the defense, or having to, and when I think about career building and stuff, a lot of times you have to it's not so much competition as it is just being very clear about what you want and what you're going for, and anything that tries to get in that way or to contest that, you ward it off, right? Nope, this is where I'm at, come at me, it's gonna happen. And maybe that's where you feel right now, in a sense of just protecting that drive or what you've worked for so far. But there is this notion of simplification, right? Especially with the Virgo in the 12th house. So what could be simplified right now? Or if there is a sense of defensiveness, you know, maybe that is getting in the way of things. And it's like, okay, pare it down. There's just, you know, it's too messy over here. There's too much going on. So how do you simplify things down to the bare bones, the essentials, right? And that might be the paring down energy of this 12th house in order to create this better day-to-day that is more fluid and more in flow with what it is that you want to achieve in life. What do you need to let go of or strip away or simplify in order for that to happen? Now for the Scorpio and Scorpio risings, we have the eclipse happening in the 5th house, and we have the Sun and Mercury in the South Node in the 11th, and then Jupiter over there in the 9th. And so this could be a very creative eclipse. This is, you know, the North Node energies are pointing towards things like creation, our art projects, our passion projects, maybe literal creation of a child or childbirth or birthing something into the world. It's also a place of leisure and like what the heart wants and enjoying oneself and really taking advantage of the pleasures in life. You know what, especially after so many eclipses in the 6th house and having to like deal with the drudgery of the world and health issues and work, and the changes that happen there with so many eclipses in that area of your chart. This might be like this refreshing moment of like, hold on, what does make my life easier? What makes me feel relaxed? What do I find leisure around? What makes me passionate from a creative angle? And how do I move towards that? How do I get serious about that? Especially with Saturn back in this area of your chart. And there may be this push and pull between your place in the community or what you have to offer the community, or groups or friendships that maybe play into your creative elements or what it is you're creating, or your sense of joy. You know, some people might not bring that. Maybe this is a time to do a friend audit and you're like, you know what, you know more. Do you spark joy in my life? If not, maybe we need a break. And then maybe there are people that help facilitate that, right? Because the 11th house is not only this hopes and dreams area, it's about the people and the alliances in our lives that can support what it is that we are passionate about or want to create. So there is this level of support, and if people aren't in support of what it is that, you know, is really important to your heart right now, you can even talk about love relationships, right? Because this is a place of romance, you know, and if a friend's down on you and you're like, no, but I really do feel this connection, and they're finding all the things wrong with this person, you know, maybe there's this push and pull between those areas of, you know, listening to your heart and what you love versus the collective or a friend group, or just making sure those are aligned with what it is, where your heart's at. And because it's the 9th house, this is all a place of like forward momentum with Jupiter there, and like your belief systems and having a wider picture of the world. And it's interesting, the cards here, the 8 of Roots in the first quarter, along with Explore. So to me, this makes me think of the craft. In the sense of what is your craft, and are you putting your energy towards your craft and perfecting it? And, you know, like our craft is the thing that we love when we think about the passion projects, which could be our work too. But now might be a time to explore what it is that's meaningful work, what it is that you want to do every day, about putting your energy in because you love it. You know, it's that craft energy and you're working towards that. So maybe explore what that might look like for you, Scorpio. For the Sag and Sag risings, we have another angular eclipse, right? This is a mutable sign. So we have that eclipse happening in the 4th house of home, family, and foundation. And then the Sun and Mercury in the South Node are hanging out in the 10th house of profession and career and, you know, ambitions in life, authority and legacy. And then we have Jupiter over there in the 8th house of shared resources, you know, things like debt and credit and loans and inheritance and coming together in collaborations where you work together and you're relying on other people contributing things. There can be a focus around that. So there's a push and pull between what's going on internally in your world and maybe your spiritual self and what no one else might see except maybe your close loved ones or people that you live with at home, and then what you're projecting out into the world. And so there might be a disconnect in those areas that needs to be rectified or felt into in some way, and that will require certain changes to happen, because the 8th house too with Jupiter over there, this is you know, a period of time, a year-long period of time where a lot of growth happens in transition about making changes. And, you know, some things die off and some things are reborn. So this is a very internalized eclipse where you might feel pulled to be out there in the world or dealing with a lot of worldly, you know, professional, you know, work-oriented issues, but it's going to pull you back into your sense of self that's really rooted in the emotional foundation, right? You know, how do you feel about where you're at on the inside? So we have the fledgling of leaves in the first quarter phase and the simplify card coming up. So to me, this feels like a learning process of where maybe to be vigilant in life, maybe to have a beginner's mind, or look at these areas with a different mindset, or be open to learning new things, or open to communicating in some way. Or even if we see the picture here about being off in your own little cloud and just reading and taking in knowledge, this might be a time to fill your head, you know, in I don't want to say isolation, in solitude, I could say, because, you know, 4th house is very private. You might want to pull back and just tuck in and be at home for the weekend, or, you know, take your time there. But there is something about these new ideas and new ways of thinking coming in that are around simplicity. Like, how do you pare it down? How do you simplify? How do you make things streamline? How do you get to the core of what really matters so that you can feel this peace and flow in your inner life, but then also show up in the outer world and make these changes that you want to have happen? So definitely go within and meditate and take your time to connect with your deeper self, or maybe even do some ancestor work right now. Could be helpful, or, you know, because you're getting down to the root of what really fills your cup and your spirit right now, and that's really something that can be done in the outer world. So take it within and give yourself that time to rejuvenate in peace. All right, for the Capricorn and Cap risings, we have the lunar eclipse in the 3rd, the Sun, South Node, Mercury over in the 9th, and Jupiter over there in the 7th. And so, like the Cancers, you know, we're having this place where Jupiter is angular. So Jupiter is definitely very present in your life right now, especially in your partnerships and how your partnerships are growing, who you're partnering with. If you are married or have a long-term partner or business partner, they might be seeing growth and momentum right now, or changes might be happening in their lives, or you can benefit from them in some way. But a lot of the meat of the eclipse is happening in this 3rd house of where the mind's at, how you communicate, what you're writing, what you're reading, what you're taking in, news, information, all that in relation to also this 9th house energy of what it is that you believe, this world view, you know, this bigger spiritual picture. And there might be a place to step into new ways of thinking and communicating, because maybe the old way of looking at, you know, old philosophies or old exacting world views or just viewpoints of the bigger picture aren't really working right now, or they're draining you in some way, or they're it's like not seeing the forest through the trees kind of thing. And so how do you open up to this new perspective that might be more compassionate, understanding, flowing, creative? And to see the Sage of Blooms here in the waxing gibbous phase with the surrender card, because Sage of Blooms energy is very high, like leadership. I have a vision. I know where I'm going. And maybe that's it. Maybe there is a vision that you have, and it's time to surrender to that knowing. And then being able to pursue it. Because sometimes when our mind goes back and forth and we have doubts, do I do it, do I not? Then there's this stagnancy that takes place. But there could also be this point of like maybe egoic energy where, you know, you're like, I know how things run. I've got it all together. I'm very certain of the vision and the worldview. And then there's this surrender quality that's like, yeah, maybe surrender some of that ego a little bit so that you can see things in a different light, or lead your life through a different light, or be an authority figure, or deal with authority figures. Maybe there are some authority figures, especially with Mars over there in your 10th house right now, that are just like, and then there's this surrender quality that needs to happen. But either way, it's more of an internal eclipse that has to do with your mindset and your belief system more than anything, and then how that pairs into how you relate with others. Now for the Aquarius and Aquarius risings, this eclipse is happening in the 2nd house of resources and our movable, tangible objects, our income, and the 8th house of shared resources over there with the Sun in the South Node and Mercury. And credit, debts, also this place of transition, this place of intimacy. The 8th house is the kitchen sink of all houses here. And then Jupiter over there in the 6th. So there is a lot of focus around money right now, and how maybe you grow your money, how you position yourself to earn more, maybe getting a raise at work or doing things with Jupiter in the 6th house. How do you change up your productivity or your work habits to be more expansive and maybe take on more work to make more money? One of those types of things. But it could also be around sort of the self-worth and self-confidence issue of being able to know, be clear on enoughness, or knowing what it is that the talents you have that you can bring to the table, and really nourishing those. And especially if they're more of like spiritual talents, like maybe you have excellent intuition, or you're a wonderful connector and you can bring a community together into a loving space. There's this really being able to recognize and lean into these gifts that you're born with, and then how can you put them into action in the day-to-day sphere with Jupiter over there in the 6th? Because you can have these gifts, but unless you show up for them and keep showing people like, look at what I do, I'm growing into this, I'm finding my routine, and feeling good about the progress I'm making of living and being this, right? Because it's almost like the 5th house is the thing that you're passionate about, but the 6th house is taking that passion and creativity and then putting it into motion where you become it. Not quite in the 10th house way, but in a way that you show up for it. It's ritualized in some way, so that you can become a master of such things. So I like to see the World card here nearing the balsamic phase and this compassion. And so there might be this place where there is a chapter winding down in your life, and you're integrating what it is that you've learned, or transitions that, because the 8th house is a place of transitions, and you're integrating that with compassion, whether that's on the internal sphere or dealing with the collective or the community, and holding space and compassion for others and drawing people together. But either way, there seems to be this benefic energy around feeling more whole and more complete by closing down what once was, starting to open to what could be, and just being compassionate all the way through for yourself and for other people. And maybe that's the gift that you have to give right now, is being that source of compassion for yourself and others, because we know the world needs it more than anything right now. So hopefully Aquarius can show up for others and be that light in the world. All right, with the Pisces and Pisces risings, this is a very big eclipse for the Pisces. We have that lunar eclipse in the first house. We have the Sun, South Node, and Mercury in the 7th house, and then Jupiter over there in the 5th. And I mean, I'm going to go straight to the cards on this one real quick, just because we have the Judgment card coming up, which was interesting because Judgment came up for the Virgo risings as well. So we're seeing Judgment on either side. But then we see the Soul card. So a lunar eclipse in your first house, this is, a ripening of the self, a ripening of taking the reins in your life and where you feel spiritually called, especially from a creative angle. The 5th house is like, what do I love? Where does my heart feel joy? Where is, maybe romance taking place, creative projects, maybe even taking time for more leisure and enjoying oneself, that's less aligned with what other people want, because the South Node over there in the 7th house, maybe it's less about, showing up for others. Or if there's a component of that, it's like being in service to others, yes, but how do you fill your own cup? Because that's important right now. And the Judgment card in that waxing gibbous phase is definitely a wake-up call of like, things need to change. There's no going back from this particular moment. Your soul is speaking to you loud and clear. So how do you bring that into full fruition? And then really step into that role of where your intuition and your creative faculties are guiding you right now, because it's almost feels like for the Pisces, it's just glaring. It's like, just listen to, look at the soul. It's like trapped in the body. It's like, let me out. It's hot in here. I want to cool down. I want to be out and free. So let yourself be that phoenix rising, and really, this is a wonderful time to make changes that nourish you as a person and where you want to take your life, especially from a creative angle. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you got some insight from this lunar eclipse in Pisces. It's one where I think, just relax into it. There's a lot going on in the world. It can be hard to relax sometimes. But there is something to be said about almost powering down, taking a time out, letting go, and feeling into what is your spirit saying, what's your soul saying, and how does it want to move forward. And the only way we can get there is really to feel, to intuit, to like sense, and to connect, not just with other people, but to connect with ourselves and to connect with something higher. Because even if it's unclear right now, if we surrender to what is happening, then a path will be made. And I think that's the important part to acknowledge here, is that surrender isn't giving up. It is about letting go so that something new can take its place, or something can be fixed and healed in the process. So, all right, just a reminder, if you want to go further with your own chart and talk about what your year ahead is going to look like, what's going on with your natal chart, I am available for one-on-one readings over at energeticprinciples.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter at energeticprinciples.com, The Heavenly Wind, which goes out once a month. And I would love for you to take advantage of my Lunar Voices form and share with me what your lunar experience is like, because I want to collect this data, study it, and bring it back to this world so everybody can, what does a Virgo moon like yourself, if you have a Virgo moon, what does that person experience, or that person? And so I think I'm already reading the responses, and it's just so much fun to dissect what the experience is like, because it's not as simple. Not all Aries moons feel a particular way. So I'm looking for those themes, and I need your help to get the data to do that. So if you click on the link below, wherever you're watching this, there will be a direct link to the form. Also, Tarot of Her, the tarot that was featured in this broadcast, is going to be up for a second edition here in the fall. I'm, aiming, fingers crossed, for late October. So if you're interested in being pinged when that goes live, go to tarotofher.com and you can sign up for our mailing list to be notified. So one other thing, I just did recently a podcast with Broadcast Astrology on the magic of midlife. So if you're someone that's like me, between 35 and 50, and you're like, what the hell is going on? This would be a great podcast to listen to. So I'll drop a link below on that as well. And of course, if you like this program, like, subscribe, I think those are the things you do, right? You leave a comment below if you're on YouTube. Let me know how this lunar eclipse is working out for you. I'd love to hear more about it. And yeah, really, I wish you all the best out there. Take it easy. Eclipses are no joke. They're reconfiguring. They're important moments. They're not to be rushed through. They're here to be felt, thought, and I guess we could say integrated. So take care out there, everyone. I wish you all the best.